2025 reorganization meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Joseph Steiner, and I was the chair of the board in 2024. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:40-10, adequate notice of this special meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here at City Hall. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed on the city's YouTube page and is also being broadcast on Summit's governmental channels, which are Comcast Channel 34 and Verizon Channel 30. At this time, I would like to ask Mayor Fagan to swear in the members of the board who were reappointed to terms last evening, and that's Scott Lucas, Tom Yuko, Allison Chifo, Jay Feshkins, Paul Chantguli, and we're asking you to please come down to the podium, along with our newest member who was appointed to a 4-year term in James Neary. Mayor Fagan.
Thank you.
I don't think so.
This is a little like Animal House. I state your name.
What would you like?
Use that one.
I
Great.
know.
I think this is. All right, I'm going to stand over here. Okay. And you all will repeat after me. And you'll say your name when I say state your name, not state your name. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties as a member of the zoning board according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Thank you for your service, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. A thank you to Bob Pulowski, who was last year's council liaison, and an announcement that Claire Toth, newly installed as a council person last night, will be our council liaison for the upcoming year. At this point, so that we are legal, Ms. Julios, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Steiner?
Here.
Mr. Loikitz?
Here.
Mr. Yuko?
Here.
Mr. Nelson?
Here.
Ms. Zahn?
Here.
Mr. Kieran?
Here.
Mr. Malay is excused. Ms. Chifo?
Here.
Mr. Feskins?
Here.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Here.
Mr. Neeren?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Okay, before we elect the chair for 2025, we have 3 resolutions that we need to act on. These are for the professionals who will serve the board in 2025. Ms. Zulios, would you present those resolutions?
Sure. So our first professional appointment is for our board engineer. We have Colliers Engineering, and representing Colliers would be Ms. Marie Raffay. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Okay. So our next resolution will be for the professional appointment of board planner. We have Burgess Associates, and representing Burgess, we have Mr. Ed Snikes. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I'm sorry, who was the second? Okay. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Loigett?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Okay. And then for our final professional appointment, we have Board Attorney. That's Davison, Eastman, Payon. Our representative is typically Andy Ball, but tonight we have Mr. Zach Styczynski. Did I do well? Filling in. Okay, close enough. How do you say it?
Styczynski.
Okay, I was close. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Second is, I'm going to take Allison. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, at this point, we will consider nominations for chair for 2025.
I would like to nominate Scott Loikitz to be chair for 2025. I've served with Scott for a few years now. I'm not sure how many it is, maybe 4 or 5. And I've always found him to be very thoughtful and insightful. And over the last year or so, he's had the opportunity to chair several of our meetings and has done a very good job. And so I think he'd be a good chair for 2025. Don't want to go any further without thanking Joe for being chair also. This kept us
Thank
very
you.
stable and kept the ship running. But I will nominate Scott for 2025.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay? Is there a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
The motion carries.
It's all yours. Scott, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Stephanie, should we do vice chair?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Are you, nominations for vice chair?
Yes, sir.
I would be very, very happy to nominate Miriam Zahn. Having been chair last year, there were a lot of different issues, and she always did everything she could do to make sure she knew everything that had to be known about those issues, and presented very, very cogent concepts and decisions that she had made that our board don't normally agree with, and has been a very good candidate, I believe, and will be a very good candidate for vice chair.
And second.
Okay. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Chairman Loikitz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
The motion carries.
And I believe there's one other election that we have to do, and that is, believe it or not, we have to elect our secretary, even though she's a city employee. But it's also very appropriate because she's what keeps this thing running. And I would move Stephanie Sulios as secretary.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
I'm sorry, I missed, okay.
We're all gonna second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Saves you
Thank
doing a
you.
roll.
Perfect.
Thank you all. Miriam? That's exactly what I was going to
Thank you.
I feel like I could do something.
There you go. That's the only reason.
You earned your money for the night.
Great. First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Fagan for swearing us in. Really appreciate her presence and being here. And I certainly want to echo Tom's sentiments and thank Joe Steiner for being an excellent chairman in 2024. We are grateful to be led by him, and we continue to be grateful for his service into 2025 as a member of this board. So please join me in giving Mr. Steiner a round. Okay, so I will start off with our standard preamble. I'm sorry that some of this was already said by Joe, but just to be safe, I'll reread through it. Good evening and welcome to the January 8th, 2025 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Scott Leukitz and I am the chair of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We've already done the Pledge of Allegiance. So in accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this special meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record. It's been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed on the city's YouTube channel and also broadcast on Summit's government channel, which is Comcast Channel 34 and Verizon Channel 30. A transcript of this meeting is also being taken using video and audio. So anyone who speaks, please use a microphone so we can record it properly. Please note that there are fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter. Stephanie, do you want to do a roll call again or not necessary?
No.
Okay. As we mentioned before, Andy Ball is the zoning board's attorney. He has a conflict, but he may show up later. Mr. Ball advises the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with the applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. And we have Mr. Zach Stasinski. You said it better than I ever could. Thank you. In Andy's place, and I'm sure he will do an admirable job. Stephanie Sulios is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary, as we pointed out earlier. Congratulations to your reappointment. Ms. Sulios works with applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Ms. Sulios also does not vote on these applications. Also present are experts who are hired annually, as you just saw, to the board to provide input. Tonight, we have Marie Raffay from Colliers Engineering, and we also have Ed Snikes from Burgess Associates, and he's our board planner. These experts are seated here, the table to the right of the board, and the public's left. They also do not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but only a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Before we enter executive session to vote on the application, you will be advised on how many votes are required for that particular application. Each case will begin with the applicant's attorney giving an overview of the application process to date and the variances that are required. We then hear from any additional expert witnesses that the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and their expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals have completed their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions only. This is not the time to tell us your opinion or what you think about the case. That opportunity will come at the end of the hearing. Please be careful as to how you phrase your questions. They should not be preceded with a statement about the case, but should be a direct question to the witness. Also, before you ask your questions, please clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. It is important that a court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have a second opportunity to speak. In that time, you may be able to express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we will enter into executive session where board members will discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but will not be able to participate in our discussion. All right? And with that, we can begin with our first case. 6 Garden Road. Sure.
Did you want to take attendance for the other cases?
Yeah, that's fine.
While we get set up for you,
Perfect.
the others are here.
Okay. Do we have representatives from 260 Oak Ridge Avenue?
Yes, we're here.
Great. And then finally, do we have representatives for 573 Springfield Avenue? Great. I see you, Sam. Thanks. Please.
Microphone.
Oh, come address the board.
My apologies.
No worries.
If it was possible to see if anyone in the audience was here with interest in that application, perhaps we could discuss while the other applications start.
It looks like there is.
Would you mind speaking in the hallway while the other applications start? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that.
Just looking to
Okay.
where to plug in. I think it used to be there.
Yeah, it should be able to.
Is this open?
There's not an extra outlet
Oh.
right in front of the podium.
I think you found it.
That's the only reason I was here.
Excellent. Ready, Ms. Rose?
We're ready.
All right. Can we swear you in?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true?
Yes.
Great. Would you like to give a little overview of your case before we
Yes.
let your expert testify?
So, my husband, Michael, couldn't attend tonight, but, my husband and I bought our house at 6 Garden Road in Summit in 2013. We live with our 2 children. Our daughter's, 11 years old. Our son is 7 years old. We've lived in the house for 11 years, and, you know, as they're gotten bigger, we're feeling constrained in the house. And, you know, we considered looking for a bigger place, but we quickly realized that we didn't want to move. We love our cul-de-sac street. This is where, you know, our kids learn how to ride a bike. We love our neighbors. Both of our kids' best friends live on the street, and some of our closest friends are our neighbors. So we just love it. You know, this is home. This is where we want to stay. And so we're here to ask for 4 approvals in order to reconfigure the second floor of the house, you know, for a better functionality and to beautify the exterior of the house.
Great.
Thank you.
Do you have any other expert witnesses in addition to Mr. Rosen tonight?
No, just myself and Mr. Rosen.
Mr. Rosen, you are well known to this board. Are your credentials in good standing?
Yes.
All right. Would we accept this expert witness? Great. Thank you.
Okay. To start, the picture that you can see is the house, Michael and Izumi Shadonsky at 6 Garden Road. And the house was built in 1954. It's a very plain house, sort of a Cape Cod. It's a little bit, there are some things that are awkward about it. It looks very pleasant on the outside, but quite simple. What we wanted to do is to improve the appearance on the outside, and then I'm going to be moving some of these photos around a little bit just so that you can see. So improve the front facade by taking off the little portico and making a porch across the front. We will continue the roof line where the very high dormers are on the left side. Continue that roof down to cover the new front porch. That front porch leads to one of the variances for building coverage. It also contributes to lot coverage. And I'm going to go through the 4 variances, but I just wanted to show you quickly what we're planning to do here. So on the next photo here, this shows the back of the house, and you can see the room on the left. That is actually not heated or cooled. It's sort of somewhere between a porch and a room, but it's right now it looks sort of added on, sort of tacked on. The roof line is very different than the rest of the house, so we wanted to raise that roof line up to be similar to the pitch of the main roof line, which you can see on the side of the house here. In doing that, it adds a little bit of attic space, not much that's going to be usable, but there is some attic in there as the roof line goes higher. And we're doing an addition, a small addition in the back over here, just to increase the size of the primary closet. Going back to the front, going to this photo, we're going to be, as we're improving the appearance of the front of the house, we're also going to be adding some floor area. I'm just going to go back and forth, and I'll come back to this photo a few times during the presentation, but the proposed is to have the house much more sort of a richer materials, nicer materials, better proportions. You can see that the roof line on the main body of the house is extended down. Right now, the height of the house is 24.1 feet on average, and it's a little bit taller than that, a little over 30 feet from the very lowest point to the highest point. As you can see at the back of the house, the garage is down below. So the height is not changed. We are raising the roof line a little bit on the right side over here. And we're adding this dormer across the front in order to get more living space on the second floor, but everything is directly above what's already there, with the exception of this dormer in the center, which is a new bedroom. Right now, the house has 3 bedrooms, and we want to expand it to 4. So in doing this, we need 4 variances, and I'm going to get to those in just a second. What I'm showing you now is a little bit of a highlighted area for the project narrative, which you have as part of the application. And the main point that I wanted to get is the first highlighted part, which says that the lot area is 10,242 square feet. It then goes on to describe what I just mentioned, what the project consists of the new front porch, the second floor alterations for an enlarged primary suite, and a new bedroom and bathroom. So the variances that we need, there are 4 of them. Rear yard setback, which is currently 30.4 feet, and it will stay at 30.4 feet. Again, in looking at the photo of the back of the house, as you saw, it's the part that we're going to fully enclose and heat and cool, which has the low pitch roof, and that roof will go up. That's the only piece that requires the setback, is the changed roof configuration. The second one, just to mention why that's an issue, the rear yard setback is because as the property is undersized, it's in the R15 zone, so the expectation would be about 15,000 square feet. This is 2/3 of that, at just over 10,000. The lot width is supposed to be 90 feet. It's actually 88, so that's pretty good. That's pretty close. And it means that our side yard setback is compliant on the right side, on the left side, and the combined is the same. So that means that it's the shortage of square footage on the lot is because the rear yard is, the lot is shallow. Instead of being about 150 or a little bit more feet deep, it's much less than that. So some of the items, like this rear yard setback, is short because the property is not as deep. The house, even with the new porch, will be compliant on the front yard setback, but it's basically the existing configuration of the lot and the house that's legally existing there that causes some of these variances, particularly this rear yard setback. Second one, lot coverage. The existing is 43.1, and the proposed, as it says here, is 43.7. However, since we submitted the application, in that time we've talked a little bit more, and we would like to reduce that to keep it as exactly the same, and that may be a resolution, part of the resolution as a condition of approval, that we keep it at 43.1. The way we're going to do that, and I'm coming back to the photos, is that at the back of the house, it's a little hard to see, but off on this side, on the left of the picture, there's a little retaining wall. You can sort of see the steps here. There's a railroad tie retaining wall which goes across the driveway. The driveway comes in from the front, obviously, but then loops all the way around in the back. And there's a mixture of driveway and sort of unpaved area. It's sort of broken pavement and gravel. Rather than have that go, as it currently is, all the way right up to the base of the wall, we want to have a 12-inch or larger buffer there that we can plant, which will look a little bit nicer. I'll come back to some of the things that we are not doing in the rear yard based on the comments from the planner. So going back to this, so we'd like, if that's okay, we'd like to have a condition of approval that we will have it either stay at 43.1 or less than that for going forward. And the reason I say or a little bit less is because it may turn out that you can't get a car right against a retaining wall anyway. So there may be even a little bit more space that we would that we'd like to not have as paved back there. The third one is building coverage. Currently it's 18.6. The proposed is 19.5. And you can see just on the square footage off to the right, we're adding just under 100 square feet. It's 95 square feet. And most of that is in the front porch, and there's another little landing that's a little more than 12 inches high, so that counts. So that's building coverage. Again, that's higher than the allowable 18%. And then we get the floor area ratio, and this is where the house is limited by the size of the property. The existing is 27.3. We want to add 3% to that, and that takes place mostly in those dormers across the front, and there's a little bit in the back of a closet, part of a closet, and some attic space over the family room. Now, that 30.3 may seem like a larger number than what you might expect, but keep in mind that the property is undersized by about a third. If it was a conforming 15,000 square foot property, we would not need any of these variances. Front yard is currently okay, side yards are okay. The rear yard, I'm assuming that if the property extended farther to the back, then we would be able to accommodate a larger rear yard than the 30.4 feet that's on here. The lot coverage, instead of 43.1, would be 29.5, which is well under the 35% that's normally permitted. Building coverage, instead of being 19.5, would be 13.3, well under the 18%. And if you want to think of it, just whatever the number we have, if you took a third off, then that's what it would be on a conforming lot. And similarly, floor area ratio, instead of 30.3, would be 20.7, which is lower than the allowable 25%. Any questions on that? I threw out a lot of numbers. I just want to make sure that everybody's if not comfortable with them, at least understanding it at this point. I mentioned that the height is conforming and unchanged. Height is measured in a number of ways. All of them are fully conforming. None of those statistics are changing with this. And then just to go on a little bit more through the project narrative, and again, this is identical to what you have. I've just highlighted a few things so that I know sort of what points to make. The rear yard setback, I've already discussed most of it. The other comments are down here in the third paragraph. The addition is not a full story. It's a gabled roof with a steeper pitch than the existing roof, designed to be more visually consistent with the design of the rest of the house. The existing rear yard is well screened with a fence and landscaping along the rear property line. The other thing to mention is that often a rear yard setback is important if there's another house looking back at this house. That's not the case here. The Shadowski's house is positioned so that looking straight back, it's between houses. So the houses that are on Pine Grove are farther to the left, and the corner house on Linda Lane is diagonally farther away and to the right. And it shows up in the planner's report where there's an aerial photo, and I have a copy of that, and I can show that a little bit later if necessary. Lot coverage, building coverage, and floor area ratio. This covers some of what I've just said. And again, at the end here, if the lot area was conforming at 15,000 square feet, the proposed project would be well within compliance for all of these statistics. Now, we have to have, there's C variances for the rear yard setback for building coverage and lot coverage, but it's a D variance requiring 5 votes in favor for the floor area ratio. We also have to show the positive criteria and the absence of any negative criteria, and so I'm just going to mention some of those now. So the positive things, the main one is that it maintains essentially the same silhouette. We're not making it any wider, any taller. We're bringing it a little bit farther forward, but since every variance is sort of about a balance between individual property rights or desires and community interests, it was important for us not to come closer toward the front than what's allowed. We did not want to go higher. This house could be 10 feet higher, which would be a more significant change to the feeling on the neighborhood along the street. So we didn't do those things. We just changed sort of the appearance of the house. And all of these go to the main reason for most variances, which is the promotion of a desirable visual environment in the language of the municipal land use law. A couple of other things: energy efficiency, of course, stormwater retention. The stormwater management drawings are in your package. I can go through it if you want, but the main point is that we're at 43.1% on lot coverage, 35% is allowed. We have to capture the water for that difference, and we've done more than that. So the situation is greatly improved in terms of stormwater management. That may not affect the neighbors directly adjacent, but it certainly affects somebody somewhere downhill or downstream from this property. And as it mentions in terms of the positive, all the other bulk standards comply. For the negative criteria, this can certainly be done without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. And I'm just going to read the next couple of things just to get them in, and then I want to come back to this. The design has no adverse effect on the adjoining properties, the neighborhood, or the city of Summit. There's no change to the use of the property and no damage to the character of the neighborhood, such as to constitute a substantial detriment to the public good. There is no detriment to the neighborhood character, utility, or value. The granting of these variances causes no impairment to the zone plan and the ordinance. And the proposed additions do not significantly change the perception of the overall size of the house for the density of the neighborhood. And of course, it doesn't add to any unwelcome noise like glare or odors or anything else. Okay, so what I'd like to do is to show you why this causes no impairment to the zone plan. And what I have is the zoning map. And I'm going to hand one out. We're going to mark one in evidence, and then I'm going to hand one to each of you. Because what I want to show is how this is appropriately zoned for the kind of house that ought to be on this property, even though the lot is significantly smaller than it would normally be.
Certainly.
I'm going to keep this one. Yeah.
Do you have enough back there, or does he have enough?
You guys have enough?
With such a big board, I hope I have enough. I think I do. So what I want to show is something that you're probably somewhat familiar with, but it's interesting to see it. So on this map, on the far right side is Route 24. In the lower left is sort of towards Governor Livingston. Oh, do you want to know? That's good. Joe, do you have one?
I have one.
Okay.
We had an extra.
Okay, good. And so what I want to point out is this big zone. Give me a second here. This big zone, which is in yellow on the left side. So in the lower left corner, as I mentioned, is sort of towards Route 78 and Berkeley Heights. So all the way up toward Governor Livingston. Then it comes all the way down. It goes across Mountain Avenue. It continues on, and it goes all the way down to Shering Plow. And coming across Oak Ridge Avenue, it comes all the way across to the hospital. And in these other areas, it comes all the way around here, across Springfield Avenue, across Beekman, across the railroad tracks, and extends all the way into over here, which is Kent Place School. And so this is the biggest zone in Summit, not the zone for the biggest houses, but the biggest geographic area. It takes up a lot of, almost all of the west side of Summit. The center of downtown is in this area, and there are a lot of different zones as you can see sort of the history of Summit in how things were developed and so on. So I'm going to come in a little bit because right in here is the property. So I'm just coming in. The property is down in here. I'm going to come in even a little bit closer so we can see this. And what I want to show you is that there's an R6 neighborhood, which assumes 6,000 square feet. There's this R10, which assumes 10. And there's this finger that goes off that's between Blackburn Road and Blackburn Place. That's R10. And even though Garden Road, which is where this property is right here, and they could have easily taken all of these houses on Pine Grove and some of the other ones, which are not big enough to be fully in the R15. All of those could have been in the R10 zone, but they didn't. There are a few houses that are much older in this area. Let me get even a little closer. That are much older, and they're really more in the R6. But the property here on Garden Road was considered in the R15 zone. And in the same way, there have been a number of cases along Plymouth Road and others where the properties are more like 10,000 square feet. But I think, and this is my opinion because I wasn't on the task force that updated the latest master plan, but I think that the idea was that there would be houses of a similar size within this zone. And that one might expect 4-bedroom houses, a house with a family room, those kinds of things, 2-car garage, which you might not fully expect in some of the other zones. Probably not in R6, maybe in R10, but the houses that would have 4 bedrooms and up are in the R15, and the biggest houses are sort of the older ones from 1900 and 1920s, which are called the north side, but it's sort of the northeast, where it's in the R25, R43 zones. Anyway, the point on this is that although almost all of these houses on, the properties rather, on Garden Road are about the same size, they were put in the R15 zone because of the assumption that houses might be more appropriately sort of R15 houses. So that's, I think that that's one of the main reasons why doing what we're doing and having a floor area ratio of 30.3, which may seem like a high number compared to the 25. Again, if it was a full-size lot, it would be 20 and change percent. But I think that the intent of the ordinance was that slightly bigger houses could be compatible with the neighborhood, they could be compatible with the zone plan and with the intent of zoning, which is to have sort of coherent, relatively consistent neighborhoods. And again, we're not going taller, we're not going wider, and so on. Let me just, so in the renovation of the house, it's mostly to change the appearance, but we do have these other ones. Feel free to stop me if anybody has, would like to discuss or anything.
I do have a question
Yes.
about I'm not sure about the comparison with the R15 and the R10, because for the house is, the lot is sized like an R10, essentially,
Yes.
right? But for R10, you would still have an 18% building coverage, and you would still have a 25% FAR. So
Yes.
those, it's kind of, it's the same variance whether this house is R10 or R15, is that
Right.
correct? Yeah.
For those items, yes,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely. But the difference is what zone it's in, and then what the expectation would be for what would be judged to be sort of compatible with the intent of the ordinance. That's the point that I wanted to make. I agree, and I know the numbers on the 18% for lot coverage, 25% FAR. The point I'm making is that it was not put in the R10 zone, which would have implied that that's a different kind of, different scale house that might be there. When the master plan is reviewed, a lot of these things they come up, and there are re-examinations. At times there are major changes. This one has not been changed. Anyhow, so that's the intent is not to say that it should be in this zone or that zone. What I'm saying is that the master plan and the zoning map indicate that it's supposed to be sort of in the same context as the other houses within the zone. And we're not going to the limits of what it would be if it was R15. We're somewhere in the middle between those two. So I think that it doesn't impair, in terms of the negative criteria, I'm saying that it doesn't impair the, adversely impact the zoning ordinance or the intent of zoning.
Okay, well, we can take any more questions from the board, but I also want to take questions from our experts
Right,
and then
I
open
was-
it up to the public.
I can go through the staff comments.
Absolutely.
There's not much there of commentary. The first one, mainly, sorry, just to start, this is the zoning department, Roger Dornbeer, his comments. I won't repeat the factual things, but it says that the purpose of this zone is to preserve the integrity of existing single-family areas by maintaining existing development intensity and population density consistent with single-family residential neighborhood patterns, a compatible relationship between new and expanded houses and traditional neighborhood houses that reflects the best of the neighborhood character, particularly in terms of scale, siting, design features, and orientation on the site is encouraged. All of those things I've addressed. I'm glad to go back through them, but I don't want to keep everybody here forever. There's a repetition of the zoning statistics, and then excuse my scroll as I run through a bunch of things that are not as significant. On the engineering, it's mostly a repetition of some of the facts. It does not seem to bring up much in terms of problems, but I defer to the engineer on that.
So could you just clarify what you plan on doing with the stormwater?
Yeah, so the stormwater, we've shown on the stormwater management plans, which are in the sets, that there would be probably a horizontal system, but it may be a more vertical one in the front yard, midway between two existing trees, sort of centered in the front yard. We would capture roof water from the house, bring it there. We have, the design is for 292 cubic feet of water, which captures more than the amount beyond the 35% lot coverage that's allowed. It covers more than that. Is that sufficient?
Yes, so you're, it looked to me like you were only capturing portions of the roof and not the whole roof. So you're not gonna overload the system, or you're just putting, it looked like it was the back, what is now the porch area, that
Yes.
sunroom area?
Right.
Plus the front half of the house, is that
Yes,
accurate?
because that gave us plenty of surface area to put into the stormwater management system.
Okay, and so the remaining roof will be just a downspout continuing to where it.
Either where it goes, it's probably going to be rerouted, because when we look at the back of the house, one of the concerns is that this garage is down low. We don't want this to be a funnel to capture the water, so it may turn out that we capture some of the water from this gutter sort of above the garage, and bring that around. But we'll see what the best thing is. The key is that we're capturing more water than would normally be required. Are there any other
Any
questions?
Marie, do you have any other?
I have no other questions.
Ed, do you have any questions
Yes,
for
I
this
do.
witness?
Let me get to yours. Go ahead.
Certainly. It really has to do with your testimony as it relates to the FAR variance.
Yes.
In the FAR criteria, it's typically based on a percentage of the lot area. So
Yes.
even though you have an undersized lot, that percentage is trying to control essentially the bulk and mass of the structure. So instead of looking at it from the standpoint of how it may conform if it was on a conforming lot, in relation to the proposed design, can you explain to the board, what is it about the proposed design that helps to mitigate the impacts of the additional bulk and mass of the building, of also the building coverage and the lot coverage itself? That's really, I think, more of what your focus should be, more so because this factor is based on the size of the lot, in order to not allow overbuilding of homes in relation to the lot size, ultimately.
Right,
So if I
and-
can ask you that question.
Yeah, and so there are a few pieces to this. You mentioned building coverage, lot coverage, and floor area ratio. The floor area ratio is higher, but it's a statistic that you can't really perceive on some houses unless you have the statistics, because it's not as apparent what's behind the house, how deep it is, and so on. What people perceive is the front of the house and maybe a little bit around the sides. In this case, there isn't even somebody behind that would perceive this as being particularly tall or bulky or anything. In the other houses, as in the photo in your report, which I'll get to in a moment, the adjoining neighbors to the rear are farther back. The side yards are both conforming, the front yard, as I've said. So the impression from the street is really the difference between the house as it is, viewed from the front, and what it's going to be. And by keeping the same width, keeping the same height, and so on, it doesn't change the feeling of the house like it would even if we had less floor area, but it was taller. If it was taller, and by the ordinance, it could be up to 10 feet taller, that would be a more significant impact on the streetscape and the way that the house is perceived. In this case, what people, I think, will perceive is a better-looking house. The floor area is made up of, like, the dormer that's on the left, the piece that comes a little bit forward, the dormer on the right. Those kinds of things are what, that'll help the appearance of the house. Even on the original house, it's sort of awkward and kind of like, this forehead is too tall in here. Actually, these dormers, the windowsills are what, about 5 feet high? Because it's kind of out of proportion. And we wanted to bring it back to a more appropriate scale. One of the other things that is mentioned in your report is that we don't have a patio in the backyard. We don't have these various other things. Just by adding this little sort of shallow front porch, it provides an opportunity for somebody to sit outside under shelter, and the kids play in the front yard on this property because the driveway just takes up so much space. And so we wanted to have something where there wouldn't be a need to add something more in the back, like in the back right of the property. Anyway, I think that what people perceive is very different than what the statistics says, because people can't determine the floor area unless they can see the whole volume of it and be able to calculate it.
So wouldn't you say that some of the proposed roof lines, or even the configuration of the gables and/or the dormers, are helping to break out the mass of the structure?
Yes, and I think that they're not even just breaking up, but bringing together. I think that the way that the house is now, there are elements which, at first glance, it looks sort of so ordinary that you don't really pay any attention to it. But the roof line, the eaves are at different heights. The portico is sort of like, almost like a kid's drawing of a portico, sort of a triangle on two sticks. And the shutters are mismatched for the windows. The dormers don't have a lot of, if they're supposed to be the jewelry, they're not really very jewel-like. And so the intent is to really improve the appearance of the house. And Izumi and Mike had told me in the beginning, when we started working on it, we want to have this house look fantastic. We want to be able to come home and say, that's our house, this is great. And honestly, I didn't think that they were going to I didn't know how much they meant that. So our first designs were not as adventurous. They weren't as bold. And Mike in particular said, you're on the right track, but you're not there yet. Go for it.
Right.
Make it beautiful, and really have it more balanced. And so I think that it's really more bringing it together. I think that the eave line where the gutter is, unifying those, bringing the dormers into the right height, having something that's the dormer in the center with the peak over the front door, having the porch where the porch will not have a railing, because we don't want to have that sort of playpen feeling. We want to have it so that it opens up to the yard. You could sit there comfortably, not feel isolated.
You had mentioned the front of the building, but it also occurs on the side elevation?
Yes.
Because that's also a potential impact to the public as well.
Yeah, you see the corners, and right now
Even to the neighbors, too.
yes, certainly. I mean, the sides are relatively bland. Let me just-
And what you're proposing will improve those?
Yes, yeah, and better materials, more of a roof overhang, just stylistically, it's just a lot. I think that it's a much nicer building.
You mentioned in your testimony that you're going to be reducing some of the lot coverage.
Yes.
Where exactly were you looking to do that? Could you point to the plan you prepared? on the exhibit, just to kind of give us an idea, just so in case the board was to act favorably on this application, we have an understanding of where that might be, where that reduction would be. I know you mentioned it verbally, I just wanted to get a bit more of a fix on the layout.
Yeah, so this is on V1, and back in here is the driveway. There's a retaining wall across the back and on the right side of the driveway. The driveway loops around. There's a space for a car to park here while others can go in and out, but you can't drive right up next to a retaining wall. It's more than a curb height, so what our plan is in an L shape that would go across the driveway on the, where there's currently driveway on the downhill side of this retaining wall, across and then back toward the house, and to have a planted area in there. We haven't determined what those plants are. It would be a minimum of about a foot, where it could have it could have perennials and various things like that, or it could be more extensive than that. But we want to move the car around and see what works best. The preference would be to have a bigger planting area, but not knowing exactly how it all works and how a car maneuvers around to do that 180-degree turn to get back into the garage, it may be, we'll have to see on that. But what I wanted to commit to as a condition of approval is that 43.1% would not be increased at all.
So if I interrupt for 1 second, so to
Yes.
get to 43.1, how many square feet would that have to be as a minimum that you're going to,
60,
60?
that's it.
So it's 1 foot,
1
And
foot
60.
across the back and then toward the
total
front.
60 feet in length, roughly.
60 feet.
Yeah, it's, I'm rounding off, it's a little less than that, but 55 to 60 square feet is all we need in order to get from 43.7 down to
Right.
43.1.
Okay, thank you, I just wanted to know where that might be.
Okay.
Thanks, Ed. Questions from the board?
A question. The porch in the back that's gonna become the family room?
Yes.
There's an exit there, that door. When you go down, I guess it looks like a stair or two, and then there's a landing, and then what do you do, walk right onto the grass? There's no pavement?
Right, there's no
Post?
walkway or anything, that's not really an exit, there's nothing really happening out there, it's just to be able to go out of the house from that side.
So there's not gonna be a path?
There's
to
not
get to
going to
it?
be, there's not going to be anything that adds to the lot coverage over there. That was mentioned in the planner's notes as well, along with, there's no patio going in the back, right? There's a door out there now. We just shifted it a little bit. We reduced it in size and shifted it a little bit farther to the back. There's also another exit out of the side of the living room, which we're just taking out. So that landing and step goes away.
Any other questions?
I have 2 questions. So for the stormwater, I just wanted
Yes.
to clarify, you mentioned that you're collecting more stormwater than what is required, and I'm just trying to follow it on the, maybe I'm misreading it on the, what is this sheet?
Yeah.
Anyway, the last sheet of the stormwater in the construction details, it says the storage volume required is 292 square feet, and then it says that your total recharge system capacity is 292 square feet. So that looks to me
Yeah.
like you're matching it completely, but I'm trying to understand
Okay.
what the extra volume is,
If you
if
go
you can
where it
explain
says,
that.
this is a copy of that, can I hand it this to you just so you can see? It's identical to what you have. And starting at the top, it says proposed impervious surface maximum permitted, blah, 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 and it gets to a number.
Right,
So it's that, that's the, then it has the area.
I see, so
So
you're,
what we're providing, the tributary area to the recharge system is 1,167 square feet, which is greater than what we
Got it.
would be required to have.
got it,
Then it works through
right,
with,
okay.
assuming 3 inches of rain, so then it works out to, the actual, there isn't a number on here that says what it,
So it's
what
really
it
the
would have
storage
to be.
volume proposed as opposed to required, because what's required is less, so that's the,
right.
just a little a
Just-
nuance.
Right, in terms of the, it would be 221 cubic feet,
Okay. And then the second question I had.
and we have 292. So-
Yeah, yeah. If you go to the picture of the back of the house.
Yes,
There were many discharges, right? That you have probably a 4-inch pipe that comes out
back of the house.
by the garage.
I'm getting there.
Yeah. So by the stairs, there is like a 4-inch pipe that you can see the white pipe.
Yes.
There's another smaller pipe, maybe a 2-inch pipe that discharges in the same point. You have a downspout kind of where the seam of the house is, where the I guess the porch meets.
There's nothing in here.
There's one that goes on the far side of the driveway, and it kind of discharges the driveway.
There's one over here, yes.
Yeah, and then I felt like maybe there was one along the retaining wall. You had, there's one drain, right, in the bottom of the driveway, in the center of the driveway. So two things. Are you going to collect that and route some of that to the front of the house? Because, I mean, you're doing all this work on the house, and really all the water's funneling down to your garage. And even looking at that design, it's hard to imagine that one drain at the bottom is effective in keeping the water from getting into the garage. So I didn't see it on the plans I saw. It looked like you were doing the front of the house, the roof leaders, but is there any way to sort of reroute some of that so that you get the benefit of, having a drier backyard, and especially like the last 2 weeks, all the ice and.
Right, simple answer is yes, we would want to do that. The civil engineer was showing the water being taken from the gutters and leaders at the front of the house. The key thing is the statistics that you were mentioning. I think that we ought to change it in order to alleviate that problem, because that right there looks like a funnel to me.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's water, and actually, they have had water in their basement, not surprisingly. You show anybody a picture like that, and you ask, where's the water going? So I think that we may end up coming back, and when we get the building permits, have the civil engineer revise the drawings in order to show the same quantity of water being captured to meet that requirement, but maybe taking it from some of these other gutters.
And do you know where that drain that's in the center of the bottom of the driveway, does that go to a dry well, or does that go to the city storm sewer?
I don't know.
'Cause if it's
And
already going to storm
I
sewer,
don't know
trench
where it
drain,
goes when the
maybe.
leaves cover the whole grate,
Yeah,
other than inside.
yeah.
So I think that the comment is an excellent one, and we'll go back to the civil engineer and see if we can get some tweaks to the design, because the engineering department in Summit would probably prefer that, and maybe the fire department too, so they don't have to pump out a basement.
Yeah, it's tricky with the elevation from the back to the front, but if you could work it out, I think that would be better for
Yeah, I
the
agree.
functionality of your garage.
Mr. Clark might hire you as a civil engineer.
We get along very well, and we work on enough things together, and he has the expertise. Anyway, any other questions, any other concerns that the board members have about any part of this application? And I wanted to make sure I addressed any of all the planning comments, Mr. Snakes?
Just one other comment, Mr. Chairman, if I could. With regard to the C variances that you're proposing, are you proposing that as a detriment benefit argument or an argument based on the hardship of some of the pre-existing conditions that you have in the property, as far as the setbacks?
It could be interpreted, well, I would say that the setback is a hardship, that because of the configuration of the lot, the shallowness of the lot, which is the language that's used, and the position of the portion of the house that's legally existing on the property. So I would say that for the rear yard setback, it's a C1. The other ones, to me, are C2s, where the benefits outweigh any detriments.
Thank you. Great. All right.
Actually, I just have one.
Sure.
Back to the picture of the front yard.
Yes,
It shows looks like roots in the front yard.
yes. John Linson
Yes.
mentioned that. And so John Linson mentioned a variety of trees that need pruning and so on, and he also, at the end, he said he had no objections, but he suggested adding topsoil to those areas because the roots are high, and we will.
So these roots are not going to be impacted when they install the drainage system?
He also mentions that it's within 10 feet of the drip line, or, I wasn't sure whether he meant in 10 feet into it or within 10 feet of the drip line. But there is a space, there may be another photo that shows it, but there's a space between, and you can sort of see in this picture,
Yeah, that's
there's
what I'm
room for some, you can see the roots in the lower left, and sort of to the lower right, there's space there, you can see the branches coming from the tree that's sort of in front
Right.
to the left, and there's another one way off on the right. Putting in this stormwater management system, the system itself probably won't have much effect on the trees. It's really the way it gets installed and the
Yes.
movement around it.
Yep.
And so that has to be done carefully. And with the other comment about the roots, those roots, by adding topsoil, that'll be alleviated. You can't cut the lawn
Right.
like that without setting it really high to get around those roots.
Mr. Chairman, just one more comment. It's
Certainly.
also about the forest report. Obviously, he approves the application, we don't need any conditions. But and this is based on a personal concern, I once had a neighbor who waited too long to take care of a dead tree. And I just want to make sure the applicant noted that there's comment about a dead tree and storm damaged branches and things that could become a safety hazard. So I don't think we need a condition about it, but the forester did note it.
We'll take care of that, yes. There are a number of, there's a dead ash tree. Ash trees have been so destroyed by the emerald ash borer and so on, and so that's something that has to be addressed. It's gonna come down one way or another, and it's better to take it down so you know where it lands.
Great. Thank you. We'll open
I
it
don't have
up
anything
to questions only from the public. Anyone? No? All right, great. Would the applicant like to make a closing statement?
Yes, thank you for your time, and
All right, great. Thank you so much. And then we'll open it up to any comments from the public. Seeing none? All right. Can we go through conditions?
Sure.
And then we'll open it up to executive session.
So we've got, obviously, the usual compliance with the conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. The applicant agrees to maintain the lot coverage at the currently existing 43.13% or less. And then the applicant shall submit a stormwater civil engineering plan for review and approval with the city engineer regarding the stormwater in the back,
Yes.
collection in the back.
In compliance with the
Mr. Chair,
engineer's letter.
are we gonna
Yeah.
maintain 2 years jurisdiction on the water?
We can.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I didn't hear what that was.
Are we gonna maintain the typical 2 years jurisdiction on the water?
Sure. You have an issue with that? Okay, great. And can you remind the board of the type of variances and the number of votes required in the
We
affirmative?
have 4 variances. 3 of them, the C variances just require a simple majority. The D variance in this matter for the FAO requires 5 votes.
Okay, great.
Isn't one of the C variances theoretically eliminated by their,
That is true.
yeah?
Yes.
That is true.
Great. Thank you, Zach. And with that, we'll open it up, or we'll close session, go into debate. Open it up for any comments that the board would like to make.
start it off, it's fine.
Thanks, Jay.
You know, the architect really always does a very thoughtful approach with this. On the high level, when you see a 30% FAR, it's really important to note that statistics can say one thing and the numbers can say another. And what I mean by that is 30% seems large. We're talking about 300 square feet here. And when you balance that with the aesthetic design and where the massing is truly is, the example of the silhouette, it is something where I think beautifully is integrated with a very modest request, and all of the other conforming things are either improved by reducing the lot coverage or just making things more functional. I think this is a very thoughtful constrained request. For that matter, I think it's beneficial, and I think it outweighs any of the variances that we would grant, so I'd be for it.
Great, thanks, Jay. Tom?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I can support it as well. Some of this is driven by the undersized lot and the shallow backyard, as Mr. Rosen pointed out. I think the small increase in building coverage does not noticeably impact the neighbors. I can't imagine there'd be any negative impact. FAR is always a higher standard for approval. I see no negative impacts on the scale of the project. It's in line with the neighborhood. I agree with Mr. Rosen's argument that the site can accommodate the FAR. I see no detriment to the public good from the FAR. It's certainly much more attractive house than what's there now. I appreciate the applicant's interest in making it look as nice as they're going to make it. Great presentation from Mr. Rosen. I can support it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I can also support this. I think the one thing that hasn't been mentioned is that one of the variances is really for an existing condition, the rear yard setback. So, I mean, to me, that's almost grandfathered in a way, because I know we have to approve it, but we're really talking about the limits of the house as it already is. So, you know, the fact that it's 30 feet instead of 45 feet, it almost doesn't matter to me if it's an R15, what the requirements are, because it's the house that's there, right? We're not asking you to take the room down. I did think it was a very thoughtful design, and yeah, I think if you can work in some of that stormwater, I think it would be really beneficial for all the work you're doing on this house. And I just want to also point out one thing that I think is very interesting about your application, different from a lot of the ones we see, is that you've been living in this house for 13 years, right? You didn't just move into Summit and buy a house and just, you know this house, you love this house, you love this neighborhood, and I appreciate that you guys are, your family's growing and you're trying to make it a place that you can stay in and, live in comfortably. So it's a little, it's a little different than a lot of the applications we see, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also concur with my colleagues and add that I felt that Mr. Rosen's argument about the perception of bulk was, or FAR as a statistic, a little difficult to perceive, but the fact that they're making these improvements without a visible perception of a much larger house was very compelling, and I don't know that we've heard it stated in that eloquent way before, so I was really appreciative of that, and I could certainly support this application. So with that, I will ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Stephanie, can you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
enduring that long on that.
No, I know, that's.
What? I'll bring my hat over.
Allison wants to turn the heat up?
Yeah.
Do you want my sweater?
Want to make the switch?
No, I thought I had a sweater. My jacket.
It did get colder in here,
It did, right? So we leave the door open? It's funny, I brought like a wrap.
Is it in the car?
Congratulations on the new appointment, by the way. You deserve it.
Yes.
Okay.
And my feet are cold.
Was it fitting for us?
I made sure I put the undershirt on it before.
Was it not fitting for us? Is that what it is?
Let the record reflect that Mr. Ball is joining the dais and that Ms. Zahn is recusing herself from this next case, 260 Oak Ridge Avenue. Would you like to swear in these?
I would love to. So if you're testifying, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And one at a time, please state your name and spell your last name.
Sure.
Sarah McGrath Bloom, Bloom.
Jack Bloom, last name Bloom.
Thank you.
If you could summarize your case for us and tell us how many expert witnesses you have tonight?
Sure. So, like I just said, my name's Sarah McGrath Bloom. This is my husband, Jack. I grew up in Summit. My parents live around the corner on Silver Lake. My brother and his family live on Rotary, and my aunt and uncle live on Greenbrier. We purchased 260 Oak Ridge with the goal to restore and renovate the home for our growing family, bringing it up to current standards while also honoring its original architecture as a classic 1930s Georgian colonial. The house has not been updated in decades. In fact, some of the infrastructure is still original to the 1930s. It requires substantial upgrades, including heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and stormwater management. We've actually walked through the plans with our direct neighbors, so that's 254 Oak Ridge and 256 Oak Ridge and 264 Oak Ridge, who were not only comfortable with the plans, but in favor of the house being upgraded and maintained. We have a 1-year-old daughter named Claire, and we're expecting another baby girl in June, and we look forward to having them grow up in Summit, in our neighborhood where I have so many great memories. Happy to answer any questions. In terms of experts, we have our architect, Jack Kelly, here, and our civil engineer, Andrew Clark, as well. Does that cover the experts? Cool.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just out of curiosity, is anyone from the public here for this case? Doesn't look like. All right. Excellent. Mr. Kelly is also well-known to this board, to say the least.
Congratulations on your
Thank you, sir.
promotion.
And can we assume that your licensure is still in good standing in the
Yes,
state
it
of New
is.
Jersey?
Yes.
Great. Will we accept this expert witness? All right, perfect. Great. Mr. Kelly, you have the floor.
Okay, so I've known the Blooms, I think, for about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. We've been looking for houses in Summit because their desire has always been, as Sarah said, she grew up here, their desire's always been to move back here and raise their family here. So we came across 260 Oak Ridge last spring, I believe, March or April. And we immediately all agreed on 3 goals. Number 1, we were going to preserve the house. There was never any thought of taking the house down, and I'll tell you why that was a possibility. But it's a beautiful 1930s Georgian brick colonial, classic Oak Ridge Avenue kind of house. Very well proportioned, very nicely designed. And if you drive by it, you would think, oh, that's your classic Oak Ridge Avenue house. And from the front, it is. But when you open the front door and go in, you are in a pre-war 1930s house. Ladies. Which, as Sarah mentioned, has not been renovated in 40 years, at least. So you have some 1980s renovations, and you have some 1930s bathrooms and other things in the house that are still there. It has a tiny kitchen in the front of the house. Someone actually cut the kitchen in half at some point and put the laundry in the front of the house. So as you look at this house, you imagine, oh, it's a beautiful center hall colonial. This is the living room, this is the dining room, you come in the foyer, you see these grand rooms to the right and to the left, but on the right you see the living room, on the left you see the laundry room. The kitchen is, I would venture to say, in my experience in working in Summit, has to be the smallest kitchen on Oak Ridge Avenue. It actually has to be the smallest kitchen in this entire neighborhood. If it's 10 by 10, I'd be surprised. Because again, they cut it in half and made a laundry room. So part of the goal was to preserve the original house, bring it up to the 21st century, provide the amenities that people expect today, especially in this neighborhood, on this street, put the rooms in the right places. So we're going to move the kitchen to the back. Lovely piece of property in the back, no neighbor, wooded in the back, sloping down to the reservation. Put the kitchen in the back, put the dining room in the front, where you would expect it to be. Add a family room in the rear, because everyone loves a kitchen family room open to each other. Upgrade the kitchen, of course. Upgrade all of the bathrooms. The bathrooms are tiny. You really feel like you're in the 1930s. They are the smallest bathrooms that you can, they use the smallest amount of square feet you can use to make a bathroom. Even when you enter the front door, the foyer is tiny. If I'm the guest and Sarah was opening the door, there's barely enough room for the two of us to stand in the foyer and take a coat off. So we're going to fix the proportions on the inside of the house to match the beauty of the outside of the house. And the third, I think Sarah alluded to, is that we're going to upgrade the infrastructure. Some of the heating systems are original, the boilers may be original, a lot of the bathrooms are original, believe it or not. The house is not insulated properly, the windows are 100 years old, and on and on. We're going to replace the wiring, we're going to replace all of the plumbing, we're going to replace the roofing. So they are making a major commitment to this house because they love Summit so much and they love this neighborhood so much. But this house needs a lot of love. And it has been neglected. I mean, the roof leaks, the paint is peeling, there's mold in the basement. I could just keep going. So preserve the house, bring it up to the 21st century, and replace all of the 1930s infrastructure. Okay, so it's located in the R15 zone. The lot area is 27,815 square feet. So it's almost double the size of a standard R15 lot. We're proposing an addition in the rear, as I said before, for kitchen and family room. We're proposing 2 additions flanking the main facade, one on the right, one on the left. The one on the right is for a library with a master bathroom and closet on the top. And the one on the left is for a mudroom and a little side entry, which in this house, this is what is here now. This is the tiny little entry that's there now. But we want to make it a functional mudroom so that you don't have to take the car down the hill and in the garage and bring the groceries in and come back up the stairs to the first floor. You can just pull the car into the garage and go into the kitchen. So we need 4 variances. So why do we need 4 variances? And you'll see in a second after I explain them that they all piggyback on each other. So we're on Oak Ridge Avenue. There's a 25-foot drop on this property from the street to the reservation. 25 feet. It's a lot. So we have pockets of steep slope on the property. It's sloped, then it's flat, then it's sloped, then it's flat, and so on. And the house actually was placed, when they built it, in the steepest part of the land. There is a little bit of a drop off from Oak Ridge to the front door. You do go down 3 or 4 steps. But where the house occurs, there is a 6-foot drop from the front of the house to the back of the house. So we have a steep slope situation, which causes 1 variance. We have a story above grade because of this. The basement in the rear of the house is completely, without a doubt, above grade. As I said before, because of the steepness, which you can see on one of these photos, this photo, from front to back, is 6 feet across the depth of the house.
And Mr. Kelly, these exhibits match the ones in the board's packets?
Yes.
Correct?
Although I do have a surprise exhibit for you
We love surprises.
that the planner knows about. Stephanie knows about. So I'll go through the variances. We have 4. Number of stories. Since the basement is considered a story, this house constitutes a 3-story structure per the ordinance. The existing is 3 stories, and the proposed will also be 3 stories. So that's a variance number 1. That causes variance number 2, which is building height, average building height. The current height is 34.7. The maximum permitted is 35.0. And our new height, once we add the additions, will be 35.4. That's an average height. It is measured around the perimeter of the house. You take about 30 points around the house, and you come up with an average. I would argue that that's imperceptible. It's 5 inches over the limit. You cannot perceive that 5 inches anywhere. The height of the house on Oak Ridge Avenue will be the same. So that's kind of a mathematical, technical variance that's kind of unavoidable. All the additions we're adding do comply with height. It's really the original house. Steep slope, as I mentioned, I'm going to let Mr. Clark focus on the steep slope variance, but we do have a steep slope variance because of what I said before. The house is located in the steepest part of the land, and we're manipulating some of the land in the back of the house to make a larger, flatter area, and then gradually getting back into the natural slope. And the 4th variance is we have a small overage on floor area ratio. What I said before is true. Each variance piggybacks on the other one. Because we have a steep slope, we have a story above grade in the back. Because we have a story above grade in the back, the basement constitutes floor area. Because the basement constitutes floor area, we have a slight overage on the FAR. The allowable is 25.0. We are proposing 25.7. So that overage is 189 square feet. The usual test for floor area ratio, involves, can this property handle the overage? And I think the answer is yes. It's 189 square feet divided by almost 28,000 square feet. I would say it's de minimis. And it's driven by the basement. The basement, since I have to count it, constitutes 7% of the FAR. 7% of the 25. So, that 1/3, I don't know, close to 1/3 or over 1/3 of the FAR is in the basement. The house is not, in my opinion, the house is not too big for this piece of property. We are well under the building coverage statistic. We're at 11% versus 18. We are well under the lot coverage threshold, which I was going to tell you, which is 21% versus 35% allowed. We're 5 inches too tall on an average, but again, I think that's a technicality. All the side yards and front yards and the rear yard are well above what's required. I'm just going to go through, well, I have two other areas. I want to go through the positive criteria, why is this a good idea? And then I guess maybe we'll address the city official comments. We feel that our design respects the original architecture of the house. We are adding 2 side wings to the house, which is perfectly in character of houses from this era. If you drive down Oak Ridge Avenue, there's a house very similar to this, 2 or 3 doors away, which has a central mass and 2 side wings. The side wings are smaller, they're set back, they're less prominent, so it's a classic way to do a house. We're going to greatly improve energy efficiency. As I mentioned before, we're going to replace the heating and cooling systems, we're going to replace all the windows, and we're going to replace all the insulation or lack thereof. More than, I told the Blooms that I think once, that the house probably has no insulation, and they just looked at me like I was crazy, but it was the 1930s, they didn't worry about it. We're going to improve fire safety with new hardwired smoke detectors and proper egress windows. Mr. Clark will testify to the stormwater management, where we're going to provide the required stormwater management, and we are capturing all of the roof water in the stormwater system, new and old. We're removing an existing non-conforming garage. There's a 1-car garage very close to the Cornforths property. We're taking that down. So that removes actually a non-conforming structure. And as I said before, in terms of bulk or in terms of other standards, we are well under building coverage, well under lot coverage. Should I stop? Should we move on to the comments, or?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, we're going to have questions from our board experts and then
Okay,
questions
should I
from
let them ask me,
the
or should
board
I?
itself.
Oh. Ed called me yesterday
Okay.
and said there had been a question about the attic. From who, I don't know who, but.
Can I clarify?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, the question became, when you look at an attic space that's being expanded upon, we want to make sure there's a calculation that makes sure it's not going to be considered an attic story, and thereby adding an additional story to the 3 stories that's provided. So
Yes.
we wanted to make sure, so I thought I'd let the architect know that question ahead of time, so you could do the calculation.
All right, so we spoke yesterday, we did a drawing, I brought 12 copies of it, I sent it to Stephanie this morning for her
Great.
file. So I can
Please.
put- So what you're gonna see is, there's 2 ways to calculate an attic. There's this City of Summit way, which Ed just said. Summit calls it an attic story. And you measure the area of the attic versus divided by the area of the 2nd floor, and it has to be a certain percentage, has to be 60% or less of the 2nd floor area measured at 5 feet. So you take a measurement at 5 feet, and you get an area, and you divide it by the 2nd floor. The other rule is, there's a rule in the New Jersey Uniform Construction Code where an attic can only be 1/3 of the 2nd floor below, measured at 7 feet. So you take that other measurement at 7 feet, and it has to meet both of those rules.
Are we going to mark this?
As A1?
Okay.
So if it meets both of those rules, which it does, it is not a story. Okay, so the concern what might have been.
And these calculations show that?
4-story house. or
Okay.
not 3.
Great.
I brought 12, I don't know how many there are again.
Is that different than what's in the plan?
There is no,
There is an attic plan in there, but this is showing the
The
calculations.
areas
It's the second last
are
page, or last page.
So should we add some kind of condition that someone verify what these calculations are?
So it should be the, no, sorry, not second last, it's the fourth one, so it's going to be for your elevations. There's-
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Kelly, it's your testimony that it's, this roof condition is compliant under both methods of calculation?
Correct. It meets the criteria for both both the City of Summit's rule definition and the State of New Jersey's building code.
Great.
So it is not a story. It is technically known as a habitable attic.
All right, and with that, we'll go to Ed and see if you have any further comments on this or
No,
anything
Mr.
else
Chairman,
from the planning.
I did look at the calculations, and the criteria is it can't be more than 60%. So this shows that the overall area is 847 square feet or 46.6%. That's ultimately what I was concerned with for the board.
Great.
Other than that, I think the applicant has addressed this issue.
Okay, great.
May I ask a question?
Let's
Well-
have Ed.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll come back.
Ask me a question, or Ed?
Well,
When we're done.
we'll have the board ask questions in a minute. Ed, I just want Ed to get through his questions.
So there's a variety of things that are mentioned in the reports about trees. I don't know if we want to talk about trees or not. If we do, Mrs. Bloom is in charge of trees.
Well, I
But-
think the forester did ask for a landscaping plan, so I think.
I just want to clarify, I think that he said it in his comments, that Mrs. Bloom and Mr. Linson walked the whole property.
Yes.
Tagged the trees, of which ones were dead, which ones were damaged, which ones could go, which ones should stay. And there was a permit issued. I'm saying this is all true, right?
Yeah, it is all
There was a
true.
permit issued by Mr. Linson,
Yep.
and the Blooms have taken the trees down that he said were okay.
And we will submit a landscape plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, so there will be a landscape plan. They haven't invested in that yet, but there will be a landscape plan. And we'll file that with the permits.
Great.
There's some other things, someone, I think the engineer said something about mechanical equipment. We will show that. We haven't shown it yet, air conditioners and such. It's not an issue. The lot is large. There won't be any variances involved in, we'll either put them on the side of the house by the library, or we'll put them behind the library or somewhere, but it won't be an issue.
We'll let our experts ask you some questions, and if anything else you feel is not covered in that dialogue, then we'll
All right.
come back to the expert analysis.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
I just have two questions. One regarding building height. You had said that this is really due to obviously the change in the overall shape of the building and the number of measurements you have to take.
Yeah.
You're not changing the roof line or the ridge line of the roof, are you?
The existing ridge?
Yeah.
Does not change.
Okay. I think that's an important point that you could bring up as it relates to the building height variance that's being noted. I know that doesn't change in this application. In addition to that, the three-story aspect of the building, that really isn't changing, it's actually getting somewhat mitigated off the back of the building. Isn't that true, based upon your rear elevation? It's sort of, you're adding other one- and two-story elements to the back of the building, correct?
Yes, I would agree with you. I mean, if you look at this facade as it is, it's straight up and down, and it's pretty stark.
Probably except for the wings, right, that are being added.
Right, but we're also adding an addition outward from the rear, which is 2 stories.
Yes.
And has different roof lines.
Right.
So I didn't make a point of that, but I think it actually would help break this facade up.
I think those are important for you to mention for the board, so that they can consider that in the deliberations.
Yeah, and there's some undulation to the facade in the back. There's a terrace, because the first floor of the house is completely, there's 1 story out of the ground. They wanted to have some outdoor living space, so how do you do that? You need a terrace or a deck up at the living area, rather than going up and down 14 steps if you want to, eat outside. So there's some, I mean, I can go to the rear elevation if you want to look at it, but there's some undulation with building heights and what's solid and what's not solid.
I thought that should be touched on. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for asking that.
Marie?
Could you just clarify, you're putting the HVAC probably in some conforming spot, or will it be screened?
It will be in a conforming spot easily because it's not an issue, because the side yard is quite large. It won't be in the front. It will be either I would say it's probably will be on the right side by the library, sorry, or behind the library somewhere, and it will be properly screened.
And any other questions I have, will be reserved for the engineer.
Okay, great. Any questions from the board for this witness?
So one question on back to the trees, Environmental Commission also referenced a site visit with the trees. Are those the 3 permitted trees that you took down that they're referencing, or is that something different?
So the way they worded it was a little confusing to me, but I can just give you an overview of what went on. So we did walk the property with John Linson in July. We roped off 11 trees to be taken down. Our permit was for the 11 trees that we discussed. Those were approved by the city, taken down, and to clarify, the 3 trees, 8 of them were damaged by Hurricane Sandy or encroaching or diseased. So those were all kind of had to come down immediately. They posed a danger to the house and our neighbors. And then 3 of them were for construction. So those were taken down, and those will be replaced with a similar species.
So those 3 were part of the original walkthrough with Lynn?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions? Mr. Steiner?
Yeah, you mentioned that there's a big issue on this property with steep slopes. And you're saying we're not going to touch any of them during construction? Because we had a case not too long ago where, oh gee, well, you know, the bulldozer happened to hit it, and then we were back.
We are touching almost all of them.
So there's a steep slope?
Well, Mr. Clark can
Variance?
testify, but yes. Yes.
Okay. I
Where-
thought you
where-
said
where
there
did-
wasn't one.
No, no, no.
There is.
Okay.
There's absolutely steep slope. There's pockets of steep slope. As I said, it's sloped sort of flat, then
Right.
sloped again and flat again.
I'm
But yes.
sorry, I thought you said you were doing everything on the bottom plane.
Well, where
Okay.
the addition is in the rear, it's flat. But where this addition occurs,
Okay,
It's
we'll wait
sloped.
for him to tell us more.
yes. One other question I'll ask myself. Someone mentioned exterior lighting. I forget if it was you or the engineer. Won't be an issue. We'll submit, I mean, we'll have some decorative lighting at the front door, and there'll be some decorative lighting probably on that terrace in the back or at other doors. You're required to have lighting at doors anyway, but I don't think it's an issue for light spillage on the neighbors or neighboring property. And remember, there's no neighbor in the rear.
And when we walked the property with John Linson, we kept most of the privacy trees on the sides, so the screening on the sides, he was really comfortable
Whatever
with.
lighting we do on that terrace, it will shine down. It's not gonna be floodlights and we'll, as part of the permit process, we'll just submit the fixtures that we wanna use.
Okay. Great, thank you.
I have just a couple questions.
Sure.
Maybe one. So, I'm looking for the rendition for the back, for the proposed back,
I'm sorry, for the what?
the proposed back.
The rear elevation?
Elevation, I'm sorry, yeah. So, we're saying that the height from the ground level of that back to the top of the peak is 35 feet, .4, whatever that boils out to in inches, whatever .4 foot is.
It's actually the average.
So what would the height, the actual height be? Do we know? If we weren't taking an average?
Just about 40 feet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Yes.
One second.
Ballpark, you don't have, I think I have an idea what it is, but,
I think you have a dimension on your rear elevation.
Yeah.
6 or something like that.
it's probably close to 40 feet.
39 feet 6?
39.6.
So, back to this calculation for headroom in the attic, I never really understood this.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah, it's a percentage of the second floor, I would guess, I think I know the answer, because building height would limit how high my ceilings could be on
Well,
the
there's
top
also,
floor.
well, it's a bit of a puzzle, because this ceiling also has to be a certain height to be habitable.
Correct.
So you can't have a 5-foot ceiling.
Right.
You have to have a certain area in that space with a certain height,
Mhm.
so that it can be considered habitable space. But it
Okay.
can't be too much of that, otherwise it
Affects the
becomes
building.
a story.
Yep.
So it's
that's-
always a little bit of a,
The numbers make it work, where in reality,
we make it work.
yeah, the numbers make it work. When in reality, it's a 4-story in the back, but the numbers say it's not.
Well, when we were designing it, we were obviously not trying to have a 4-story house.
I guess.
So we made it work.
Yeah.
We sized the attic and where the slopes of the roof are. I mean, a lot of that space up there has sloped ceilings, because it's an attic.
Yeah.
But, yes, we made it work.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Sure.
Mr. Clark?
Do you want to go to Mr. Clark?
Yes.
But before we do, Ed, I know there was a question about whether we need any further confirmation of these attic calculations. I think the percentages are fairly clearly below any standards, but is that sufficient? Do we need any
This is the
submission?
type of a diagram that we would require
Okay.
for them to submit in order to understand from an architectural perspective what that clearance space is, because we can't estimate what those roof lines.
Yeah, actually, I apologize. We should have submitted it as part of the package because
It's fine.
It just
You're
makes the
comfortable that
application complete.
this removes any doubt, you're comfortable with those
Yes.
calculations? Okay,
Very
thank you.
much so.
Mr. Clark, you're up.
condition.
Correct. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Andrew Clark, C-L-A-R-K-E.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Clark, welcome back.
Yes, we've appeared before us a number of times, including recently. License is still in good standing?
Since a few weeks ago, yes.
I imagine we'll accept you once again.
Welcome back, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. So I'll make reference to the drawings that were submitted to explain a couple of things, primarily about the steep slopes of the application in general. First thing I'll indicate is the topographic survey, just a description of the existing conditions. The site slopes from Oak Ridge Ave to the back, which is the county property, as Mr. Kelly had discussed. There's a substantial grade change from front to back. There are a few areas of steep slopes that affect the property in the existing condition. There's one that's around the driveway as it comes down and just on the fringe of the driveway. There's a sort of strip of steep slope that goes from left to right across the drawing, where it sort of slopes down a little bit more steeply as was described. Then it levels off a little bit and there's another little sort of finger of steep slopes behind that. And then there's an area just to the right of the existing dwelling where it slopes down. And all those four areas exceed the 15% as defined in Summit's ordinance. The total of those areas is about 4,200 square feet, which a lot of times we like to reference what that is relative to the property. It's about 15% of the property. So it's not as bad as some of the applications I've been involved with and that this board has seen, but it's something to contend with. And in the course of the construction, those areas will be disturbed by and large. There's a little section in this most substantial strip in the middle on the left side that probably remain undisturbed, but the rest of it is going to get affected by the construction that's proposed. There are no existing stormwater management measures that I was able to identify on site, so water runs down the driveway and sort of pitches off the back by the detached garage that's there, and otherwise the roof leaders discharge and run over land in the backyard. Because the street is up a little bit higher than the first floor, it all slopes down to the front of the house. The height calculation, just wanted to point out, because there was some discussion about that, is documented on that existing survey for the existing height, and then I also have the similar breakdown for the proposed conditions. The data points are set there, and then I've done an evaluation that shows that the existing condition is a story above grade. There's a 3-point definition in the ordinance, and 2 of those points are not met, so that existing condition is a story above grade. Then going to the proposed conditions,
Obviously, the addition areas in the rear and on the right side primarily are affecting, on the right side, it's affecting that entire steep slope area there. We're going to be redoing the driveway, so we're going to reconstruct the driveway in part because we're doing such a comprehensive renovation to the project, to the site, that it makes sense to bring the driveway up to current standards as well. In addition, the existing driveway is encroaching a little bit on the neighboring property as it comes down, so we're going to correct that and get that driveway so it's at least 2 feet off of the line as required by ordinance. So the area of steep slopes that is the driveway and the area next to it will, as a result, be disturbed. In the back, this larger area of steep slopes in the middle, we're not actually reconfiguring the grades of that particularly because it sort of matches in, and we're going to leave that slope. We didn't want to get involved in putting retaining walls and some of the things we sometimes see on these applications. So we're going to leave that slope, that natural slope, but in the course of the construction, it's going to be disturbed. So we want to recognize that and gain some permission to do that in anticipation of the activity that's going to take place in there with staging soil, moving equipment through there. And then in the back, this little piece in the back, we are at the base of that little slope, we are going to level this a little bit to get sort of a more leveled area behind that you know the kids can play in, and it's a little more of a usable yard area. On the left side, we have this boulder wall that's wrapping around the one tree. That's to kind of give it some room and let that tree remain as it is and do our grading. So that wall's, you know, 2.5 foot high walls. So it's pretty modest as walls go. As we typically do in applications like this, we want to bring some strong benefit to the application in general, not only for the application itself, but also for the homeowners. We did have some discussion about the stormwater management, and there was one avenue where we could have a little bit smaller, but you know they decided it'd be probably better to capture the whole roof, not just the back half, and sort of put a best foot forward on managing the stormwater moving forward. So we have a system that's sized appropriately for that. We're going to capture the entire roof area. Because of the way the driveway is oriented, we also don't want to cause any impacts to the neighbors or even to our own property. So we're putting an inlet at the bottom of the driveway there that's also going to feed into that. So the result of that is that we end up capturing and managing about 5,000 square feet of impervious surface. If this were, and I like to benchmark a permit application, if this were just an ordinary permit application, we'd be required to manage the increase in impervious coverage. In this case, that's about 2,000 square feet. So 2,000 would be what we would normally be required to manage for a permit. We're managing 5,000, so it's 2.5 times what the permit requirement would be. That's practical in the sense that I just described, to just manage the stormwater on site for the property itself, and also to put a strong component to this application for stormwater management where it can be clearly recognized as an improvement. So that's the stormwater system. It's just to the back right of the dwelling. The drain catches it, and all the roof leaders will be routed to that location. So we're going to end up disturbing the majority of the steep slopes, a little almost 3,700 square feet of the 4,200 square feet. But the orientation and the grading of the sites, I don't see any of this as problematic, other than, as is always the case, making sure it's managed properly during construction with soil erosion measures, which will be required for this project regardless. So there'll be a soil erosion plan developed with the permitting package that would be reviewed by the district, and I don't think we'll have any trouble satisfying the requirements and complying with those requirements. So if properly managed, I don't see the disturbance of the steep slopes as being anything that's going to be troubling or problematic, and we're going to eliminate some portions of that and better control the stormwater in general. So I think for all those reasons, it's a very good application that can be supported responsibly. The other thing I wanted to mention about the height inset is that the main factor with the height change is that we're pushing out to the back, and is often the case when you have a site that slopes down towards the rear of the dwelling. When you go out in the back, you get lower data points that populate that averaging calculation. And it's not really too bad, considering the topography, that our average is only a few inches above what the requirement is of 35 feet. A lot of times we get into something that's more substantial than the 35 foot, you know, you get 37, 38 feet. And the 39.5 foot is sort of the, we mentioned before, the highest point to the lowest point. If we were over 40, that would be another variance in itself, and we're just under that. So in the rear profile, it's going to look a little more significant, but as was discussed, there's some things breaking that up with the architecture itself, and also there aren't really too many eyes that are going to see that other than people that are visiting the property or live on the property. So in the front, the height will have no perceptible change from the street. So I think that's an important aspect with any kind of height variance such as this. And that sort of covers the direct testimony. If we want to go through some questions.
Let's start with our experts first. Ray, you want to?
So, I see that, I just wanted to point out that on your stormwater plan, it looks like that, that inlet that's in the driveway, you included some kind of sump in there to
That's
kind of
right.
keep out some of the.
Yeah, I try to do that all the time now, just, you know, and it's come up on other applications just for water quality and to minimize any sort of debris and influence that would adversely impact the dry well.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a sump at the bottom of that.
Do you have any, I noticed that there is a wall that's right near the garage.
That's right.
It's a
Yeah, and
pretty small wall. Are you
it-
thinking of any fall protection on that, or?
Well, we're gonna have to look at that, because it does get 4 feet and slightly above 4 feet as you get right up by the garage. So it's gonna have to be, you know, designed properly, and we may need to put some sort of, you know, even a post and rail or some kind of fence at the top level. Yeah, I'm not sure if landscaping will do it completely, but we'll have to look at that, and certainly will.
I think that's all I had.
Ed?
No questions.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Clark. The swath of steep slope, or the
Yeah.
main portion, the 2,500 square
Mhm.
feet, I'm struggling to understand how you're proposing to disturb 2,000 square feet of that. Can you just walk me through why, how
Well,
you're getting to that math?
The reason is it's gonna become a substantial construction site. And if we attempted to say that, you know, well, we're not changing the topography of it, we're not changing the grades there, so we're not disturbing it, what that would mean is you'd have to put a silt fence here and tell all the contractors you can't go there. And that
So,
never happens.
Just because it's late, let me simplify what I'm looking for. What's the net impact when you're done?
Well, the net impact of this middle section is pretty minor in terms of the grade change. It's only a little bit of change up near the patio there. Otherwise, it's then gonna be restored and landscaped, and, you know, it's gonna
So
be a grass
theoretically,
area.
when this project is 100% complete, the net impact of the permitted disturbance is probably 10-15% of the overall steep slopes? It's really where the addition is to the right and to that
Well,
grading by that tree?
The area to the right, the
That's
steep
permanent.
slopes are being effectively eliminated there.
Correct.
And this little patch in the back, again, being eliminated. In the terms of this strip in the middle and the driveway area, they're being temporarily disturbed and then restored to, you know, a landscape final condition. But in total, that disturbance is the bulk of the 4,200 square feet. It's like 3,800 square feet.
Right. So my question is really getting to the point where you're saying we're disturbing 85% of the space
Of the steep slope area.
of the steep slope?
Yes.
But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it goes back to one of the other cases we've heard where we're not doing the, what was the analogy, Minecrafting it?
Yeah, no,
So
we're not doing
that's what
that
I'm
at
trying
all.
to get to.
Yeah, this is pretty different from many of those applications that we've encountered. Yeah, we're not framing with walls and tiers and things like that. And we discussed that, but you know, the Blooms didn't want to go that way.
Okay.
Any other questions?
weren't you gonna ask about the manhole in the back? Sure.
I don't think so.
Mr. Steiner?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, weren't you gonna ask about, I was gonna ask a question about the manhole in the back of the property?
No, I wasn't going to ask
Oh,
about
okay.
Would you like to?
Yes, I'm not that familiar with it, that's why. I know we had another property on the block, and they had to do, I guess the town had to come in and do some repair work.
That's right,
So,
4 or 5 houses down, yeah.
so do we know the condition of the drainage there?
Well, we haven't analyzed this section of that sanitary line. Of course, we're staying far away from it, so our work shouldn't impact that in any way, but, I mean, I don't know what the condition is. We haven't run a TV camera through there for any reason at this point. I don't know if the city has independently or if they do that with any sort of maintenance schedule, I'm not sure. Usually I've found that when there's a problem with a sanitary line, it becomes real obvious and, you know, homeowners call the city immediately. My, sewage is backed up, and it becomes a problem immediately and gets addressed. But I'm not aware of, any particulars about the condition of that line at this point.
Yeah, I would certainly hope that they did some sort of study before they replaced the sewer in that property.
Well,
kind of a waste of time to do that.
On
It's a
that
problem
property, that, they did indicate that, oh, there's a sewer cutting across, we'd like an easement, and by the way, let's check the line, before you get involved. We checked the line, and that's when they said, hey, we gotta replace this. Now, could that be the case? Because this is part of the same line, right? It comes up, and then it comes all the way up, starts down here, this lot, I think is where it cut across. It comes all the way up to here and a little bit farther, and it services all those houses. Because all those houses sit down from the road, and so they're all sewered in the back. I've honestly seen this a number of cases in different pockets of Summit where there's sanitary lines running in the back lines, and they're not in easements, and, they're there, and then when it comes up piece by piece, case by case, then it gets addressed. I've even spoken with Aaron Schrager about, maybe there'd be a good way to attack this as like a project, but, that's a bigger discussion.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Just confirming no questions from the public for this witness? Not seeing any. Do you have any concluding remarks that you'd like to make?
No, just like to thank everybody for their time.
Sure. So I have 2 conditions noted. First is our usual compliance with those conditions in the board engineer's memorandum. Second is that the applicant shall submit a landscaping plan to the city forester for review and approval. We do have both C and D variances on this one, a D4 for floor area ratio, so 5 votes are required to approve the application.
Great, thank you. All right, we will go into executive session. Who would like to start? Mr. Curran?
So, the first thing that I think bothered me was building height before I actually listened to the testimony and understood kind of exactly where that building height is, and that it's in the rear of the yard. There's no one it's not going to be visible. And understanding what you're trying to do with that, so that now makes sense to me. And I think considering the fact that even though the steep slope variance is required, being thoughtful about restoring and not kind of flattening out the yard, I think is a benefit. All the benefits around stormwater management, removing a non-conforming structure with the garage, I think all make a lot of sense. So I can support this.
Yeah, I agree. I can support this application. One of the reasons why I ask about the height in the back is I have come with a little bit different background, and I worry. You guys worry about getting in the house. I worry about getting out of the house, and there's no easy access to get out of that house. But if I were doing a size up from my previous occupation, that would be a 4-story residential structure, 40 feet in the back. You got kids in the attic. How you getting them out? So that being said, the fire department did check off on it. They're the experts. I'm not anymore. but I can support this application. I walked the site this morning, and, I've driven by that building many times, the house many times, and never realized what was going on there, but it definitely will improve the neighborhood, so I think the positives are there. There are really no negatives, so I can completely support this application.
Go ahead, Allison.
I appreciate that your love for the historic nature of the house and that you want to preserve it as much as you can, and that you did, keep a lot of it intact. For the height of the structure, did the same thing I went through, was concerned. It is 4 stories, but the calculations are there. I mean, it's an attic, it's an attic. The one thing I do have an issue with is the perceived height from the street level. It does change. You look at the house now, it's 2 stories. With the dormers, it looks like 3 stories. But, your calculations show that, yes, it's an attic, but that's the only thing that I have an issue with. That, it went from looking like a 2-story. For the back of the house, nobody's going to see it, like they said. But I do appreciate, like I said, preserving this house. Too many houses on that block have been knocked down. Historic houses, which is a real shame, and thank you. Thank you for understanding that Summit is what it is because of our history.
Thank you, Allison. Tom?
Yeah, just to add a couple things, don't repeat what everybody else has said. The steep slope variance, I appreciate what Mr. Clark is saying, that some of the steep slope disturbance is really disturbance only in a technical sense, because they're kind of put it back. We had an application recently, I think Mr. Steiner was alluding to it, where that technical disturbance was not noted, and they had to come and ask for, retroactive permission for what they had done. So appreciate saying that up front. Appreciate that you're removing the non-conforming structure of the garage, and that you're fixing that driveway issue. I hadn't even noticed that till it was mentioned tonight, that the driveway was, abutting the property line, and you're making it conforming, so I appreciate that. Attractive application, I can support it.
Thanks, Tom. I too can support this application. I believe that the size of this lot can easily accommodate these additions, certainly in the back, but especially on the sides, which is not always the case in Summit. And I think what Mr. Rosen said earlier actually applies here, and echoed by Mr. Kelly, in that the perception of the increase is certainly not a detriment to the overall neighborhood. It's also, the house is being modernized, so we can talk about positive criteria with safety and welfare of the family. And I think these requests, the FAR and the building height are, I agree with Mr. Kelly, de minimis in nature. So with that, Stephanie, can we have a roll call, please?
You want a motion?
Motion, yes. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
No, second.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Good luck. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Me too, Jeff.
everybody back? We will note for the record that Ms. Zahn has returned to the dais. 573 Springfield Ave.
I'm here.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Samantha Alfonso, and James Weber, my partner, hiding of Alfonso and Weber, on behalf of the applicant, Prominent Property Facilities Summit. This is our applicant representative here, Charlie, who's ready to give testimony. I know it's late, so I'm gonna try to brief. Okay. As you can see, what I'm showing on the screens here was submitted with the application plans. This is a rendering of the proposed building for the Sotheby's real estate.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna
office.
cut in really quick. Can you use the handheld, because for some reason that podium mic isn't, unless, or can you switch it on?
Is this working?
That is.
Is that better? I'll hold
Okay,
it. That's fine.
then. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Stanton, how many witnesses do you have tonight?
I have two.
Okay, great.
We can go through as much as you want to, and
Let's see how we do, yeah.
when would the next hearing be? Do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait?
Well,
Do you want to know?
this is a hardy bunch. I think we can try and press through.
Hey,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
Let's see how we do.
Okay, thank you. So this is 573 Springfield Avenue. Like I said, for the Sotheby's real estate office, they do currently have offices in Summit. This would be moving those current offices to their own location. It's right across from, I'm going to show a Google Earth photo, which I will submit to Stephanie as Exhibit A1. This is an aerial from Google Earth. The property is the red dot in the middle. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see. There's an existing building there since about the 1880s. It was converted to offices around the late 70s with an addition. That's that big odd wing in the front. But now it suffers from severe deferred maintenance, especially that wing area is structurally unsound. So the Sotheby's are looking to take it over, really reinvigorate it as a residential looking office use, as contemplated by the ORC1 district. Okay. To make this a reality, several variances are required. Because it requires a D1 use variance, the way the ordinance is written, it does not allow for office use unless you use the existing building. Because here we can't use the existing building as is, but we want to adhere to the purpose of the zone district, we're looking to do a project that is designed to look residential, but be an office interior. All of the other variances are really subsumed under that and are required because of that. To provide the center hall colonial, you need more space. The parking, we're proposing 14 actual spaces. We get a credit for 1 due to providing an EV space and a handicap space. But we're required to provide 20, technically, based on the square footage of the office space. And it includes the basement, which is existing. But because it's not currently used for office space, it technically wouldn't be included in the FAR. It is included here because it is for, part of it at least, will be used as assembly space. It's only 1.6% over that which is
permitted, though, at 41.6%, where 40% is permitted. It comes to about 250 square feet. The basement, 1,500 square feet, over 1,500 square feet of the basement is included in the FAR. So if we didn't include the basement, we only counted the first 2 floors, the FAR would come to 32%. We also need several C variances. The lot coverage, which we want to note, 492 square feet of that coverage is actually on the adjoining lot 19. But it's part of the easement area, and our engineer will show you on his plans exactly what space we're talking about. But that really drives that coverage number over. We are increasing the building just a small amount to provide ADA ramp. That's 170 square feet and 200 about for the front porch. That's really to provide that residential character. In Ms. Raffay's report, she suggested considering increasing the stormwater capacity. The applicant is agreeing to do that and has instructed his engineer to increase the capacity. There's a variance for parking screening, 5 feet wide is required, and 5 feet high planting buffer in the rear yard. Subject to the city forester, we would like to provide that enhanced landscaping plan to him as a condition of approval. Our engineer will also be able to speak to some of the landscape he's already added to the plan, including arborvitae along the rear. Technically, a landscape buffer of 10 feet on each side is also required. Same reason. A loading space is required because of the commercial use. However, due to the nature of their use, and Charlie will discuss this more, they really don't need a loading space. They do want to improve the sign in the same place, and it will look just about the same, but have the new prominent properties, correct, Sotheby's name. It is within the setback. It's 12.1 feet, where 25 feet is required. The trash disposal must be 10 feet from any residential zone. Here, we're proposing to use the existing trash enclosure. And Charlie will also discuss that in their private hauler. It will be upgraded and buffered. And the light pole, the pre-existing non-conforming light pole is approximately 15 feet tall, and it's within the 8-foot setback. It is proposing to remain. If anything, they may want to do a better light and or shield it, but their experts will get into that as well.
Thank you. First witness?
Charlie Oppler, please.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Charles Oppler, O-P-P-L-E-R.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Oppler.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, can you please tell us a little bit about your position with the company and what you're trying to do here?
Sure. I'm one of the 2 co-owners of Prominent Property Sotheby's International Realty. We have 17 offices in northern and central New Jersey and 1 in Haddonfield. And we run a residential brokerage. We are currently in Summit at 309 Springfield Avenue. And we've been looking for a while to relocate, as the property where we are currently will be undergoing some changes as we are a tenant of the Unitarian Church at 309 Springfield.
Thank you. And you might have said this, but you've been there for 8 years already?
Yeah, we started in November of 2017 in that location.
Okay. And you've been looking for a building for a while. This one seemed perfect.
We've looked at a lot of different spaces in town, and for whatever reason, we just couldn't find the right one, and having something with parking was important. Even though our business has changed, like many businesses, with work from home post-COVID, we still thought it was important to have a location that has visibility, because that is important to what we do as an industry.
And you designed it to look like a residential home?
In many of our offices, you know, from town to town, many real estate offices are located in residential-looking buildings, so we always prefer that if possible versus a retail location with no parking. So this, when it became available, we bid like every other person. We got outbid originally. The deal fell through, and they came back to us. Unfortunately, we were able to purchase the property.
So it just happened to work out that you wanted it to look like a residential building, and that's what the zone calls for.
Correct. So we had our architect design something that would look residential in nature, but work for us as office space inside, and really pleased with what he's come up with.
Awesome. Can you tell us about how many employees you have and the number that are actually on site?
Well, we actually have 3 employees. We have a manager, an administrator, and then a marketing person. The rest of the people are our agents. Our real estate agents are independent contractors, and as such, in the state of New Jersey with licensed law, I can't mandate that they come in or come to work. So they have appointments, work from home, and many of them come into the office at various times, but it's rare that we have a lot of people in the office. And actually, currently, right now at 309 Springfield, we have 7 parking spots. The church utilizes the other side of the parking lot for their 7, and they have 7 spaces. So there's really a total of 14 spaces there, plus there are 2 apartments that have 3 parking spaces dedicated on that same property. So with our roster of about 50 real estate agents, we're operating out of 7 parking spots. This actually doubles it, and we really haven't had an issue with where we are now, so this just makes it even easier for us.
Thank you. And you told me about how many people usually are there, but I think your estimate was usually less than 10 people at any one time.
10, 12. We do have office meetings on a, every 2-3 week basis. They're held in the office. The agents have gotten used to either carpooling or making arrangements. Some can actually walk to the office there, and some will be able to walk to the office here. But they're for an hour. They're in the morning, generally from 10 to 11. And we've actually had some of our meetings up at Madison at the corporate headquarters of Realogy, which is now Anywhere Real Estate at 175 Park. In Madison, it's close, and we'll do joint meetings with 3 or 4 of our other offices, for training and education.
And even then, about you allow for remote attendance at those meetings?
We do a lot of we have a lot of Zoom seminars, meetings, have that component in many of our offices now, just because of the nature of what it is.
Okay. Deliveries. What types of deliveries do you receive and expect?
There's not many. Occasionally we'll get some FedExes or UPSs, certified letters, transactions still required by law to be certified for notices, unless they're changed, that email is an acceptable component in the contract, which many attorneys will put in, but there's very little activity, as far as deliveries or anything. And we're not proposing to change the ingress and egress. What's there is what we're keeping. We're going to clean it up a lot,
But
but
you don't expect to need a loading space either?
no, not unless anybody's going to deliver a house to the office, which is not expected anytime soon.
No. Those, we had discussed those lawn signs and stuff like that. That actually gets shipped directly? You have a company that
Yeah, we
deals with
utilize a
that?
company that installs our signs, that stores our signs, so we won't have any storage on site for
I
signs.
thought that was pretty interesting.
Because a lot of times they just look sloppy in the backyard and they get damaged in the back of offices, so we've hired a company to handle that.
And trash. Can you just
There-
describe
There,
how
there
you-
is a container on site currently. We'll look to change the doors. They're a little bit worn, but we have a private hauler for all of our offices. They'll come once every 2 weeks, remove the trash. We don't create a lot of trash, in the office by the nature of just everyday refuge. And if you don't have a lot of people in the office on a day-to-day basis, you're not doing that. Our cleaning services come once a week, and so I don't expect it to be a major issue.
Did you have a chance to review the administrative reports?
I did.
And you agreed to be bound by those subject to your professionals?
Absolutely.
And you had experts assist you?
Yeah, we had Tom Bijak, our architect, Rudy Holzman as the engineer, and John Barbie as the planner. So,
Thank you.
and we've worked with all three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would.
Thanks. Marie, Tom, do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay. No. Great, thank you. Board, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I have one.
No,
No, go ahead.
go ahead.
I just, you mentioned that on the daily basis, it would be a maximum of 10 to 12 people in the office, probably? And then,
In the course of the day, you may have 8 or 10 in the morning, and different group of agents may come in the afternoon.
and then how many come for that, bi-monthly meeting in person?
We've had, 30 or 40 at times. And then, again, it's an hour, and they've always made arrangements where we are now with less parking spaces. So we don't expect it to be much of an issue.
I had one question, Mr. Chair. Just who's going to be testifying to the existing condition of the property?
Well, Charlie can.
I could answer
but we do have
any
an
questions you
engineer
might
as
have.
well.
Engineers, yes.
A structural engineer, or is it the
Civil engineer.
civil engineer? Just as long as we understand why the existing structure can't be salvaged, that was a comment that you made, and there was a couple of comments in the reports.
Yeah, I think Rudy can discuss that more.
Yep.
And the architect as well.
Thank you.
I couldn't hear that. Who else is testifying?
We have an architect, not this evening. We only have Charlie and the engineer. I let the architect and planner off the hook, thinking that it would be late to get to them this evening.
Okay. Stephanie, it sounds like we might have to propose some alternate dates to wrap up this application.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have quite a wait. So you said you have at least 2 to 3 other people, correct?
Well-
That's fine.
Just to-
I think we need at least 2, yeah, we have
Okay.
to answer all
I
the
mean,
board's
the
questions.
next one that's really feasible, where you could get a chance to really be heard, would be May 5th.
Can we put our engineer on and have 30 minutes on another agenda?
you wanted to do something like that, it's also actually pretty difficult because we are pretty full. I mean, you could always request a special meeting. I mean, if you want tonight, you could say May 5th so that we have it on the record and then we could talk.
Okay,
Why don't we go down that road?
okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, great. So you want to
Do
present your
you-
next witness?
It's up to the board. Would you like to put,
I mean, he's here. Why don't we,
Okay.
why don't we do that?
And just to confirm, I assume there's no questions from the public for that prior witness? Seeing none. All right, when you're ready, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Rudy Holzman, last name Holzmann.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience for the board?
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I have about 25 years' experience in site plans and subdivisions, and I've testified in front of numerous boards in front of New Jersey, including this board, I believe, last year.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept them back once again?
I believe we're willing to accept him back.
All right, just make sure you speak into one of the microphones.
Okay, so I'll just briefly go over the site and the layout. Talk about utilities, and then if there's questions, I guess we can get into that. The site is known as 573 Springfield Avenue, Lot 2, Block 1803. The proposal is to remove and demolish the existing building and propose a new building as was discussed. Given that building footprint from the architect, we looked at placing that on the site, and basically it's placed at the same location as the existing building. We looked at how to deal with the parking lot, parking and circulation. It made sense to leave the existing parking and curb line, the existing circulation for a couple of reasons, and maintain that pattern. Some of the reasons were there's an existing easement on the lot to the left, Lot 3, that serves as an egress driveway for both lots. Lot 3 to the left, I believe, now formerly was used as a dentist office, is also in the ORC zone. And we looked at, as part of the ingress and egress, site distance, which is adequate. Leaving the driveways where they are help us to maintain some of the existing screening to the left and the right of the driveways, which exist partly on the adjacent properties. Those are shrub rows of evergreens, about 6 foot in height. And the circulation and driveways are consistent with the neighborhood, and leaves the parking lot at the rear of the site where we'd rather see the parking. So given all that, it's clear that the existing coverage lot coverage is over the allowable. The allowable's 50%, which is 7,240 square feet. The existing coverage is 2,210 square feet over that at 9,450 square feet. So that's 65.3. The proposal is 67.1% coverage, 9,723 square feet. So that's an increase of 273 square feet. If there was a way we could remove some of that, we would, but given the parking doesn't meet the actual requirement of 20 based on the square footage of the building and the circulation, driveways are where they are, the desire to have a porch to maintain a residential character, the ADA ramp, there is that increase of square footage in lot coverage, which speaks to one of the variances, bulk variances. So, and for perspective, there's actually coverage on site from the existing parking lot to the rear of the site on lot 19. There's an easement at the rear of the site, and there's that quantity of coverage back there in the blue is 492 square feet. So there's more coverage actually back there than amounts to our increase, just for perspective. And to accommodate the increase in coverage, there is a stormwater system proposed to meet the city requirement of 3 inches on the new coverage. We'll accommodate that with a dry well or pipe system, and we'll actually increase that to go beyond the actual increase to pick up and a quarter of the building and increase the system to accommodate the volume associated with piping and through the gutters and collection system, one quarter of the building. Landscaping was talked about a little bit. We have a screening of arborvitae in the back intended to basically, which helps block some of the headlights when there's night driving into the parking lot from going into lot 19 where there's an existing townhouse complex. More landscaping will be added, ornamental, in a forthcoming landscape plan that's around the building. Lighting, right now there's one light that exists on site near the right property line. That's about a 15-foot height light with a shoebox style light that serves to light up the parking lot. The plan calls for that to remain in a new pole, or for the pole to remain with a new fixture that would be designed by the manufacturer to ensure that the lighting meets the city specification for luminance and glare, as well as to meet the 3500 K temperature requirement. The trash enclosure, we looked at moving out somewhere else. We thought that's the best spot to leave as is. If it goes somewhere in the back, it increases coverage. It doesn't have the access that we have to this, which is adjacent to the parking lot aisleway, and that also speaks to one of the variances. I know there's a question about existing conditions a little bit. The site itself is flat. I'm not going to speak to the actual building condition as part of my testimony, but I could speak to any questions or concerns about the existing site condition.
Okay.
Your report is December 17th, is that right? Correct. But increasing the capacity of the stormwater, right?
Yeah, that will be accommodated to half a volume equivalent to the 3 inches of rainfall for the portion of the building collected, which is greater than the actual increase in coverage, yes.
And it will probably be a dry well as long as the soil logs permit.
Cor-
Otherwise, we'll find another way.
Correct.
A lot of these will be conditions, we'll provide the updated calculations, enclosure. Thank you for noting the parking stalls are slightly oversized. They're 9.5 by 18 instead of 9 by 18. I don't know if that might give us 1 or 2 extra spaces. They tried to squeeze it, but I understand it's more comfortable at 9.5.
I think, just to clarify, the existing spaces were 9.5, and we redrew them to 9 to kind of,
You did.
yeah, so the proposed are now, the latest submitted plans do show the 9 foot wide.
Those ones are 9.
Correct,
So
yeah.
they're-
So we were able to improve maybe some of the circulation by, in that rear parking area, we were able to restripe, shift everything to the left so that space in the corner to the right, the person has a little more room to back out and make somewhat of a turn out of that particular space.
But either way, it's still 14 spaces, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Marie, do you have any other?
So, yeah, so I'll just clarify some of the things. There's, was there an existing roof leader detail that should have been shown on there? Is that something you can add to the plans?
Yeah, we could add that. The existing system looks like it's mostly direct connection, and that's what we would do with directly connect the proposed system into the dry well and also into the existing drainage system on site.
Okay, so do you know anything about the existing drainage system?
It looks like most of it's directly connected into a collection system that connects to the trench drains at the front
Okay.
driveway. Yeah, so they're all going into there.
Okay. All right, so by adding in a detention system, the seepage pit or some perforated pipes, you're improving the runoff that's going off of the property, even if it's going into the city system, you're improving it by keeping some of it on site.
Correct. We'd be reducing the peak flow
Okay.
with the system, right?
Are you putting any new utilities on site?
There's a proposed generator, but as far as utilities, the intention is to maintain the existing service lines from the street and maintain those and connect those to the new building.
So your generator, will that be screened along with any HVAC
Yep.
systems that are outside?
Yeah, the generator, as part of, I think, the ornamental screening, or ornamental landscape plan that will be developed, we'll provide screening of the generator and any outside utilities, yes.
And none of the, you're not doing any major grade changes on the property, it's minor and insignificant?
Correct. The parking lot will be milled and repaved, but the curb will stay and just be replaced as needed in kind, Belgian block curb. But yeah, no grade changes are proposed. Site's generally flat and slopes towards Springfield Avenue.
Has this been put before the Union County Planning Board for any changes, curb cut? I don't know if they reviewed any of this.
We submitted this plan to Union County. We got a few comments back on just sending them our final drainage plan, and also to provide curb and sidewalk details that may need to be replaced according to their county standards.
And I think you addressed everything else. I have it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ed, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, just a few quick ones. With regard to the overage of lot coverage, I didn't catch your testimony with regard to how much additional are you adding compared to existing? 273?
273 square feet.
Okay, thank you. How does this building, I'm not sure if this is the right question for you or for the architect, how does this building compare in square footage to the existing building that's there? Do you have those numbers? Is it an increase in the demand of parking?
Well,
So the basement.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It
Basement
depends.
wasn't used before, and we want it to be a kind of an open, the applicant wants to be kind of an open assembly space.
Okay.
Sometimes for like marketing materials and for their weekly, whatever it is, every 2 to 3 weeks, they have a meeting.
Okay.
So because I want to use that space, it's kind of,
That's the increase in
that's
intensity.
really the increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not necessarily an increase in footprint.
Not an increase in footprint.
Okay, thank you.
There's a small increase in the footprint for the porch.
Right.
The porch is a little bit bigger because there's a bigger front porch and a little porch go in the back. But
But that's not
it's
triggering
very
additional
minimum,
parking.
Right,
Yeah.
it's the basement.
If anything, it might contribute to building coverage, but.
Yeah.
As far as trees are concerned, we did note in our report about the number of trees needed for the number of parking spaces. I know you're adding evergreen trees and landscaping. Is one consideration just to take a look at whether or not you can add any sort of shade tree, even if it's a narrow growing variety because of the tightness of the property. It's something that obviously we'll defer to Mr. Linson, but the ordinance does require 1 per every 10.
And the applicant is willing to do that, and there will be a landscape plan that's gonna have to be approved by John Linson. There is only 5 feet along the one side, but they are looking at whether or not it's possible to do something else.
Okay, maybe something off the back of the building in that green space. That's just an option for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board for this witness?
Just a couple of questions. First, can you tell me a bit more about the adjacent drive in the rear?
Yeah,
Situation?
based on what I'm seeing, I think the aerial might show that, the townhouse building, it looks like that's part of the driveway that accesses garages that I think are at the rear of that particular townhouse building. I think those buildings look like they front the other way. So I can't speak to exactly how much that's utilized, but that's what it looks like. There's garages to the rear. So that pavement on the rear of our site serves that particular building.
And the plan is just to leave that unchanged?
Yeah, I didn't see any reason to change that. You know, it exists within an easement, and it's behind the usable part of our site. We couldn't really add parking using that anyways, anyway I could see, so.
Got it. And then, is it, am I reading this right, you're bringing front yard, side yard, and building height into conformance with the new building? Sorry?
Yeah, there's no side yard variances, or front, correct. The front's 30, and the proposed building maintains that 30-foot front yard setback.
Thank you.
Actually, if I piggyback off you, if you were to make that rear lot coverage normal surface, not the easement, what would that reduce your lot coverage ratio to?
To eliminate the full one,
Yeah, as a percentage, it would, yeah, reduce it.
it goes to 32%, right? I think that's what I said. Yeah, that brings it to 63.7%, I'm sorry, for lot coverage.
Yeah, it'd still be a non-conforming condition for coverage.
It's still an increase over existing.
The lot, yes, correct. Well,
What's the existing lot coverage?
So
9450. No, it would reduce us under the existing, but not conforming with the requirement, is what I'd like to clarify.
I have a question, I don't know who it's for, but when was this building last occupied? Like you said, a dentist was there or real estate?
That was,
Oh,
the
no.
dentist was
Okay,
next
who
door,
was-
but
this-
maybe Charlie.
There were accountants that were there. We purchased the property about a year ago.
I need the mic.
The initial use were attorneys. They sold it to accountants, and then we purchased it from accountants. So the last use was an accounting use, and I would say, I think it was
April or May that we closed.
I mean, I know that your application is to rebuild, to knock the building down, but are you aware that there's the third floor, there's like a casement window that's hanging down, that's ready to fall to the ground?
It's not there anymore, and
Oh,
that window's
okay.
been boarded up. I
Okay,
went up there
okay.
Monday and took the window in.
Okay, just making sure, that's when
Yeah,
it was there the other day.
I would check it,
Thank
you
you.
know, every week.
So
and saw
nothing
that.
can get, animals can't get in right now?
No.
Okay, thank
And I
you.
didn't realize the window was so heavy, but it has been boarded, that one window.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
I mean, I just have one comment that's not related to the testimony. It's just, as a board, while we're sitting here, I would have appreciated to have all of your experts here tonight. I don't really think we're all sitting here, it's late, but there is the possibility that we could have gotten through all of this. And I did hear some, dismay about a May 5th date. But that May 5th date, if that's what happens, if we can't get a special meeting, would have happened, if you don't come with your experts, we don't have the possibility of saying, let's push forward and try to finish this. So I think I would appreciate, I don't know, but anybody else on the board, if everybody's here for the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, there was no way to get through this without, for sure, the planner, so that clearly we weren't going to get to the end tonight anyway, if you didn't bring the planner. But we probably wouldn't go much later than this anyway, so it's probably moot.
Well, on that note, should we,
Let's just make sure, for the sake of the record, we're open to the
Yes.
public for any questions from the public of either of these witnesses, and seeing none.
we should have a vote
Yeah,
to
so.
carry, right?
From what I'm hearing, the applicants would like to consider examining a special meeting as a possibility. So in that case, what I would recommend we do is we carry it for the purposes of preserving notice until an upcoming meeting, by which point we'll have an idea of when availability for a potential special meeting is, whether that's the next meeting or the following one, with the understanding that we don't have the ability to accommodate you on that meeting. It will solely be for scheduling purposes. Thank you. So, when do you think we could have a proposed special meeting dates figured out? Do you want? Do we think, so we'll have it all figured out by the 22nd? And I imagine the board would like to then carry it until the 22nd, at which point we'll have either a special meeting nailed down or the available May date.
Thank you.
So we would need a motion to carry. And council, I imagine you're waiving timeframe to act? Sam? Waiving the timeframe to act?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
Yes.
Ms. Chico?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay. And then we have a little bit of business,
Yes,
right?
we do have-
Ourselves.
We have some resolutions.
Okay, great.
So I'll start with our first resolution. It's for 33 Prospect Hill Avenue. That's Block 3501, Lot 26, ZB-24-2263. The applicant was Happy Life Group. Our eligible voting members are Mr. Steiner, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Vice Chairwoman Zahn, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Chifo. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Zahn,
Yes.
Ms. Chifo.
Yes.
The motion carries. The next one we have is 77 West End Avenue. That's Block 1403, Lot 14, ZB-23-2212. The applicant was James Fasari. The eligible voting members are Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Vice Chairwoman Zahn, Mr. Malay, Ms. Chifo, and Mr. Chanchuli. Can we have a motion of approval?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Zahn,
Yes.
Ms. Chifo,
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli.
Yes.
The motion carries. And then finally, we have the minutes from December 16th, 2024, which were recently sent out this week. We could do a voice vote for this, but we will exclude Mr. Nearing since he was not present for that meeting. Can I have a motion of approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Great. Get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Quick question before,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood what happened tonight with dismissing experts. Did they actually, were they here?
No.
They said go home, they said don't even come because we're last.
She didn't think there would be enough time, so she told them to stay home.
To avoid staying.
By the way, is this closed session?
No.
No.
Okay. In the interest of having an open dialogue, can I motion to have a closed session?
We could?
Okay.
I have to tell them to cut
Yeah.
the, I'm sorry.
I assume this is for the purpose of asking legal advice on procedure or
Whether legal advice or a planning thing, specific about a case.
Okay.
Are we off yet?
Hold on, I'm gonna turn that off by accident.
You have to find your motion, and also it has to be that we will have no other business afterwards, because the TV guys are still on, right?
I'm telling them to turn it off.
So
Okay.
we'll just
But I
need a
mean, we
motion
should
to go
pass that
to-
motion in open session,
Yes.
and then have them leave, have them turn it off.
We need the motion to go into closed session with the indication that there will be no further business conducted after we close out of closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Fine.
And let's get a quick roll
What-
call, Stephanie.
Hold on. He hasn't responded yet. Should I go back there and just?
Let's do the motion.
Okay, all right.